The Xbox Series X and Series S arrived at a strange moment in gaming history. They were among the most powerful consoles Microsoft had ever built. They launched with incredible speed, instant resume features that felt almost magical, and an entire subscription library that seemed too good to be true. Yet, for many players, these consoles felt different, less like a traditional generation leap and more like the beginning of a new philosophy. Because the real story of the Series X and Series S isn't just about hardware, it's about how Microsoft redefined what an Xbox actually is. By 2020, the gaming world had changed dramatically. Physical discs were becoming less important. Digital libraries were growing larger. Cloud gaming was no longer science fiction. And subscription services were transforming how people accessed entertainment. Music had Spotify, movies had Netflix, and Microsoft wanted gaming to have something similar. That service was Xbox Game Pass. But before we get to Game Pass, we need to understand what happened after the Xbox One. The Xbox One had a difficult launch. It was misunderstood, overpriced, and overshadowed by the PlayStation 4. But during that generation, Microsoft quietly changed direction. They focused on services, backward compatibility, cross-platform ecosystems, and player convenience. The Series X and Series S were the hardware expression of that new strategy. When the consoles were revealed, they immediately stood out. The Xbox Series X looked like a compact tower, simple, minimal, almost industrial. The Series S looked dramatically smaller, white, lightweight, and surprisingly affordable. Together, they represented two very different paths into the same ecosystem. One prioritized maximum performance, the other prioritized accessibility. Now pause here, because this dual console approach was one of Microsoft's smartest and most unusual decisions. Not everyone wanted a premium console. Not everyone owned a 4K television. The Series S offered a lower cost entry point while still delivering next generation features. And for many players, that was enough. Under the hood, both systems introduced major technical improvements. Ultra-fast SSD storage, quick resume, ray tracing, higher frame rates, games loaded in seconds, switching between multiple titles felt almost instant. Features that once seemed futuristic became everyday conveniences. And then there was backward compatibility. This feature mattered more than many people expected. Players could bring forward large libraries from previous Xbox generations. Older games often ran better than before, with faster loading and more stable performance. For longtime Xbox fans, it felt like years of purchases still mattered. But as always, hardware means very little without compelling games. So let's briefly look at three of the most played titles that helped define the Series X and Series S era. First, Fortnite. Fast, social, and constantly updated. The improved performance and high frame rates made gameplay feel smoother than ever. Second, Call of Duty Warzone. A competitive online experience where speed, responsiveness, and stable performance made a real difference. Third, Forza Horizon 5. A visually stunning open-world racing game that showcased the technical strengths of the new hardware. Players loved these games because they felt immediate. Fast loading, smooth gameplay, and seamless social experiences with friends. That combination kept players coming back night after night. But the most significant part of the Xbox Series story wasn't a single game. It was Game Pass. Game Pass offered access to a large rotating library for a monthly subscription. New releases from Microsoft Studios often launched on day one. Players could experiment freely, trying games they might never have purchased individually. For many, this changed gaming habits entirely. The question shifted from, should I buy this game, to why not try it? This was a profound change. The value proposition was extraordinary, and it reinforced Microsoft's new identity. Xbox was no longer just a box. It was an ecosystem spanning console, PC, and cloud. Looking back, this is the defining idea of the Series X and Series S generation. Convenience, flexibility, access. Players could choose powerful hardware, affordable hardware, a gaming PC, or even stream games to other devices. The boundaries between platforms began to blur. But despite these strengths, the Xbox Series X and Series S were not without flaws, and some criticisms remain common. First, a slow rollout of exclusive games. At launch and for several years afterward, many players felt there were too few major first-party exclusives that clearly defined the generation. The hardware was impressive, but its unique software identity developed gradually. Second, the limited storage space. Modern games became enormous, and while the internal SSDs were fast, they filled quickly. Official expansion cards were convenient but expensive. Third, the Series S performance compromises. The lower-cost model was highly accessible, but some games ran at lower resolutions or with reduced visual settings. For certain players, this created concerns about long-term limitations. And yet, these shortcomings did little to diminish the broader significance of the platform, because the Series X and Series S were never only about traditional console competition. They represented a larger strategic shift. Microsoft was no longer focused solely on selling the most boxes. They were building a service-based gaming ecosystem, one account, one library, multiple devices, a unified platform. Looking back now, the early 2020s already feel nostalgic. Stock shortages, day one, Game Pass discoveries. The first time Quick Resume instantly returned to a suspended game, the quiet hum of the hardware, and the growing realization that gaming was changing once again. The Xbox Series X and Series S may not be remembered as the most dramatic console launch or the most disruptive hardware design, but they may ultimately be seen as one of the most strategically important generations Microsoft has ever created. Because these consoles refined a simple but powerful idea. Players care about convenience, value, and freedom. The freedom to play where they want, how they want, and when they want. The Xbox Series X and Series S weren't just new consoles. They were the clearest signal yet that Xbox had evolved beyond hardware into a platform, a service, and a vision for the future of gaming.